Welcome everyone to Home Office Hours Live with Vistaprint. Thank you so much for joining us today. If this is your first time that you're joining us, Home Office Hours is a series of live discussions that we've put together here at Vistaprint, and we're covering timely topics. We'll be featuring guest speakers as well as our very own Vistaprint team members. During the pandemic, we knew that small business needs have changed, and we wanted to help. So we created this series as a way to connect and share advice during these times. And we've tapped our colleagues to help answer some of the questions that you might be having as business owners. So today we have with us Maureen Carroll, who is our director here at Vistaprint of Talent Acquisition and Diversity and Inclusion. Maureen, can you say hello to the audience?
Hi, everyone.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us today. Also from Vistaprint, we have James Evans, who is Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition here. James, can you say hi?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Hey, thanks for being here. And we also have special guest Shlien, who is the founder and CEO of a company called PostureBreak, which we'll tell you a little bit more about soon. Zach, can you say hello?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on today. So we'll get into the topic in just a minute, but a couple of housekeeping items here first. We will take questions at the end if you have any. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can submit those via the Q&A button at the bottom, and feel free to submit those anytime during the session. We'll take them at the end, but you can send the questions over as soon as you have them. If you're joining us on the Facebook Live, you can add your questions in the comments there, and we will receive those in the Zoom as well. And then finally, we will be recording this, and you can check that out afterwards on our YouTube channel. It'll also be up on IGTV and Facebook Watch as well. So today we're talking about the new reality for many of us, which is working remotely and probably on a longer term basis than you might have planned for. So Zach, I wanted to start with you. Tell us, how has working remotely been for you?
Working remotely for me has been great. I'm a personal trainer by trade and also a fitness enthusiast by nature. So a lot of my clients have actually gone to FaceTime for our workouts, for our personal training workouts. And I also have, because I'm not commuting, I have more time for some quick workouts throughout the day, hitting some abs here, doing some yard work there. So it's given me some more freedom. I still want to be sensitive to the fact that not everybody has that capability. So I do feel really grateful and lucky that I have that capability. And I want to just give my thoughts to everyone who's been affected negatively by COVID. But from where I'm standing, it's been okay.
And you are literally standing at your standing desk right now.
I must. I mean, I do. I love it. I encourage everyone out there to stand while they work.
Well, it's good to hear about some of the positives that working remotely can bring. For all its challenges, it also brings a lot of flexibility as well. So it would be great if you can tell us a little bit more about PostureBreak so we can understand where you're coming from in this discussion.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm a personal trainer and also fitness enthusiast. And back in 2017, I started PostureBreak because I saw a real problem with corporate America, and that was lack of physical activity. And I was first shown how lack of physical activity can affect the corporate world when I started working as a personal trainer in the financial district of Boston in 2009. And many of my clients were the corporate type who had sat over a desk for decades, some of them 40 or 50 years. And I really got to see the long-term adverse effects of what sitting can do over an entire career. Many of them not only had poor posture, but they were weak or tight, or they had pain because they just weren't moving enough during the day. And around 7 years later, one of my clients actually hired me to be on his sales team. So I entered the corporate world myself. And during that experience, I really felt what my clients had felt all their entire career. I felt guilty from lack of movement. My neck hurt, my shoulders hurt. I may have felt my waistline expand just a little bit. And so I just naturally started doing some personal training and physical therapy, inspired movements during the day to just help me feel better and stimulate or activate some of the muscles that don't get used when we're seated. So a couple of my colleagues were looking at me like I was a little crazy, but they were also intrigued, and they were asking what I was doing, why I was doing it. And that's when I thought the corporate world needed a voice to help show and how to be healthier sitting over a computer for a long career. So I started PostureBreak and morphed into a couple different services. I have a mobile app on all major app stores. The second version is currently in development right now. And I also offer 30-minute virtual sessions where it's small group training or group training over Zoom or whatever the client uses for their video platform. And we go through about 15 or 20 movements that help activate muscles that don't get used enough during the workday and stretch muscles that can be overly tight as well.
Awesome. Well, that's a great story of how you got started. And speaking as one of those people who has sat at a desk all day for most of my career, I can definitely say I think you're filling a need for sure.
Good. Well, I'm happy to help, and that's really all that I want. I just want to help. I want to provide value. I want to give people some convenient solutions that they can implement during the day. And we might even get to try a couple today for all of us out there.
I hope so. All right, so James, I want to turn it over to you here. You're on the talent acquisition team at Vistaprint, and you and Maureen both, you are in the business of bringing people onto our team at Vistaprint and bringing people into work. So what has it been like to not actually be able to bring people in for interviews? You're not able to meet them. How are you going about recruiting someone while working remotely? I know that a number of the business owners who are our customers are in the same position. They need to hire some people, but they can't actually meet them in person. So what's the experience been like for you, and do you have any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of it is just getting used to the new normal, right? So I hear all the time from folks that say they don't feel like they interview their best on a phone interview or video. So how do you get comfortable with that so that you can put your best foot forward? So some of the things is just getting used to the technology in general. So we use Zoom at Vistaprint, but I know there are tons of other platforms out there. So making sure from a candidate perspective that you log on beforehand, you know where the controls are so that you're not fumbling through that during an interview. Some of the other things, we want to make sure that we always set expectations early on so that is this a situation where there's some uncertainty due to the pandemic and whatnot? This process might be a little bit slower. We want to make sure that's communicated. Or do we need to be a little bit more flexible with schedules? In a final interview typically might have been 4 hours on site. Now it's actually broken up into different blocks because very few people want to do 4 hours straight of Zoom calls. So making sure we're setting all those types of expectations. And the other thing that we'll do is we'll send a quick doc that just gives some best practices for virtual interviews. And some of those include obviously testing your technology beforehand, but minimizing distractions. I know that everyone has been on some sort of call now where the dog runs into the room or a child runs in. So making sure that you're setting yourself up for success there. And if you are in a situation that can be quiet, then that's great. But if you have a lot of busyness behind you, setting a virtual background, some little tips like that. And then also just making sure that you can stay engaged throughout. The other thing that I think is important is making sure that everyone would be comfortable making a decision at the end without coming into the office. So how can you do that? I mean, typically someone comes in, they see the space before they make a decision, make sure that they have all those questions answered during a completely remote process. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You're often looking for a feel for the place, and it's really tough to get that over Zoom. Maureen, did you have any other interviewing tips that you wanted to add there, whether it's from the candidate's point of view or the hiring manager?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just picking up on what you're saying about the candidate and their decision, I think there's a few things. If you want to have a prep call with your recruiter in advance, make sure to set that up. Say, hey, could we, meet on the day of, have 15 minutes, test the technology, chat about any updates with the business that the team I might be meeting is facing during that day. Other tips might be asking for a virtual lunch break. So maybe meeting a couple of the interview panelists casually midway through the interview. I think, candidates should really feel empowered to ask for what they need. If they want the interview split over a few days, My sense is most TA teams right now are very accommodating to what everyone's individual circumstances are. A couple of few tech tips maybe that I really enjoy are hiding self view. So you're not necessarily looking at yourself during the interview. If you're using Zoom or other digital platforms, turn off your video, and so you can focus and feel really more engaged with the person you're chatting with. Another little tip is maybe keeping a sticky note right by your camera with any notes to look directly into the camera or things you want to remember. You definitely want to minimize typing on your keyboard. It can end up providing some background distraction and noise. So any handwritten notes or notes you want to take, I recommend having a pen and paper handy.
Great. I really appreciate those tips. Thank you. So let's stay with you, Maureen. What has it been like managing a team during this pandemic, and how have you been staying connected?
Sure. So we do have a global team here at Vistaprint that supports recruiting and talent operations across many of our non-care and non-manufacturing teams. And, initially it's evolved, quite honestly. And initially there was a lot of engagement and we were trying to increase our transparency and communication. So things like daily Zoom calls and stand-ups were really important because we wanted to see our teammates and we also wanted to make sure really timely updates were being communicated. And over time, that Zoom fatigue really set in. And so we had to flex and become more adaptable and really take advantage of more of the digital tools that we had, whether that's cloud-based spreadsheets to report on project process, or it was our Slack channels to do more check-ins and communicate real time with individuals. So over time, it's really evolved from that, day-to-day checking in, making sure team members are informed and okay, to, more trust, looking at the results and being more flexible on when that work is getting done and more ways to communicate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for our team, we've really found the daily check-ins have been a way for us to create some guideposts, if you will, a start and an end to the day, which has helped us with kind of figuring out that work-life balance that can tend to get a little skewed when you are working from home. Zach, I'm interested in your perspective on this because you work for yourself. What kind of guideposts do you set for yourself when you're working remotely?
Well, it was nice to hear the flexibility that the corporate world has adapted to, because that's how I feel working for myself. You can always be working or you can always be taking a vacation, and your success will definitely be determined of how you treat those things. But if I get an email and I'm doing something else, I'm not going to be in a total rush to want to get to it. So I allow myself the flexibility to take some time, maybe even digest and think about what my response will be, and try not to feel rushed to get the response out immediately. And the feedback has been, there's been no negative feedback on that. And anything, giving myself some more time, I think does give me that extra moment to be a little bit more level-headed, think about things a little bit more objectively, not get so emotional, and just make better responses and give better feedback.
I imagine as a small business owner, you're obviously very passionate about your business, and it's probably difficult sometimes to not be immediately responsive like that. So I think that's definitely a healthy approach, it sounds like, that you've put in place there.
Well, that's what PostureBreak is all about, the healthy approach.
So
You
let's
set that one up for me. I had to jump on it.
Yes, of course. So let's talk a little bit more about that balance of being productive and healthy at home, and kind of how you're setting yourself all up. You've given us on this webinar a couple of important tips already, but when you're setting yourself up at a desk, whether it's from home or even if it is when you're back in the office someday, or your home office, what are some tips that you would recommend ergonomically, and how you should set yourself up in that physical space to be productive and healthy?
Well, I come from the point that the human body is made to move, but we're not living like that right now. We're not hunting, we're not gathering, we're not building our homes up from the ground up. So we have to evolve. And I think that first starts with creating the right healthy work environment, which in my opinion, I think standing or even alternating between standing and sitting is the best way to work. When we sit for extended periods, the body can get casted into these bad positions. And because of the aging process, the body learns those poor positions, and then we can end up getting things like pains, or we can lose our mobility in our joints, we can lose strength. And so the old adage goes, if you don't use it, you lose it, and that is to some extent true. So ergonomically, you want to make sure that your eyesight is going to be in line with the top of your monitor. That way you're not going to be looking down too much and getting stuck in that flex forward position. You also want to make sure that your shoulder blades will be gently squeezed together. And what that does, it engages your shoulder blades, which is this whole consortium of muscles that surround those wing shoulder blades behind you, and they help stabilize the shoulder. And creating that stability takes pressure away from the deltoid, or the mobile joint of the body. So if we are flexed forward all the way, now those shoulder blade muscles aren't going to be used, and we're placing a lot of stress just right in that shoulder and making it work overtime. And that's where you hear of rotator cuff tears. That's where you hear of getting some frozen shoulder and some things that cannot pop up. Also, if we have that forward head posture, then we can start to get some pains in the neck from overuse in certain areas. And then we also want to think about our hand positions and our wrist positions. With the mouse, you want to always try to be in a neutral position. So we don't want your arm to be too far, your hand to be too far flexed one way or the other. We want that arm to be totally flat and neutral. We also want the elbow and wrist to be in line with one another. And so I like to think of two really important postural points, and that is, we can all practice it right now. Everybody at home, I'm sure everybody's thinking about their posture right now, but you want to keep the crown of your head tall and your chin tucked in. And then you want to keep your shoulder blades gently squeezed together. And so those are my 2 points. Even when I'm walking during the day, I'm thinking about my posture. I can't help it. It's that important to me because I've seen the detriments of it. And just keeping those shoulder blades together, as I said, we don't want to be walking around like a military posture like this, but we want to have some nice natural flow, get a little zen going. And I think that's going to be the best way to set yourself up ergonomically.
Well, thank you. So don't sit like there's a pole or a board down your back, but being straight, pulling everything back, and still staying a little bit loose.
Yes, perfect. And you want to think about squeezing those muscles like a 2 out of 10. So 10 out of 10, you're squeezing as hard as you can. So you just want that gentle little pulse.
Well, thank you. I think one important point to make, I think, is that even that physical well-being helps your mental well-being too, which is definitely helpful for productivity right now when people are stuck inside a lot more than they're used to. And I think it's definitely been shown as well that people are more productive when they move around a little bit.
100%.
So I wanted to open the floor up to all three of you for discussion right now, and maybe just to share a couple of general tips that you found to be most helpful for working remotely over such a long extended period of time. Maureen, can we start with you?
Sure, yeah. I just want to pick up on something Zach shared last week about also the free thinking and the good thinking that happens when you are standing and moving around more. And that's something that really resonates with me. So during this time, trying to make sure that I'm taking breaks, that I'm powering down a little early, but maybe before my babysitter leaves, to take a walk by myself. So making sure that that's built into my schedule. And schedule is really important to me. So for me, it's looking ahead to the week, really building in, whether it's family commitments or the important work commitments, or just that 30 to 45 minutes for myself that I know I'll be able to walk around the block or do something that I need to do personally is really important. So managing my schedule and planning ahead ensures me having a great week.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those tips. And I think scheduling for me has been really important as well. Just taking that time to sit down and map out what I have to do and when I'm going to get it done has been really helpful. James, how about you? Any general tips that you have that have been helpful for you during this time or even before this time?
Yeah, so I feel like scheduling times, getting into a routine, and then sticking to it. I feel like natural inclination was when everyone went remote, the routine was thrown off. I no longer have a 45-minute commute anymore. Does that mean I sleep in longer? Does that mean I still get up early, take a shower, get dressed for the day, things along those lines, get out of sweatpants? So trying to create some sense of normalcy there by sticking to my typical routine has definitely been helpful in getting me into the appropriate mental space, so that although I'm in my house, I'm at work now as opposed to before. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I want to touch base on before in terms of managing remote teams, I guess setting clear expectations around what those guardrails should be. I don't want someone to be checking emails for 20 hours a day. And also realizing that each person is going to have a timeline that works different for them, especially in these uncertain times. So we have one team member who she communicates she needs to be able to pick up her son from daycare at 3 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So being able to be flexible with that, I think, is certainly something that's key. And then she catches up on emails later on. So we know that she'll get to it and we don't have to worry about it. So just setting those expectations up front, I think, is really key. One thing that I've identified as an issue for me that I'm still trying to work out is, Zach, it's funny, you mentioned how in the corporate lifestyle, the movement isn't there as much. I actually went from around 10,000 steps a day. Now I'm downwards of around 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day. So something I've been trying to do is take a walk after work type of thing, but it's something I've identified I still need to, I guess, address and get better at.
That's a good
Right,
point.
that's a good
because,
point.
we aren't walking to meetings.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I was just gonna say. I mean, you're right. You would commute, whether it's taking the train or taking the stairs. You're absolutely right. Or talking to a colleague, maybe getting up to use the bathroom was probably a lot further away.
Right. My 200 steps is now 10. So, and walking, like you said, walking to the train, even just walking to the car in the parking lot. So I need to manufacture some of the movement that was naturally in my day before.
I would suggest a dog. That's been working very well for me. My dog has gotten so many more walks during these last few months.
That's great.
Zach, how about you? Any top tips?
I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. I think that is kind of what PostureBreak sets to do, is to provide convenient movement tools for people that are having trouble getting that movement in. So I think one thing that I've started rethinking fitness. I don't think fitness has to be a 45-minute workout in the gym anymore. I don't know how many people are actually comfortable going to a gym right now. So for me, I've been getting up and doing 50 to 100 push-ups. And that might take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how I'm feeling. And then I'll take the WOG, the WOG for a dog, the dog for a walk. And I count all of these things as fitness. I count doing yard work as fitness. I'm doing 7 to 10 minutes of abs in the middle of the morning. And I really think that might mimic a little bit more what our ancestors used to do for movement, how we evolved. They weren't just doing exercise for 45 minutes, that would be it for the day. They'd be doing these low levels of physical activity throughout the day. And I think that's how we evolved to get to where we are. So there's a lot of things that you can do during the day. Like I've got my handy tubing band right here. And what I like to do is, not everybody has this, but it's really easy to get off Amazon and get yourself some exercise bands. They've probably been selling like mad since the pandemic. And I like to do some band pull-aparts. Great exercise to stimulate those shoulder blade muscles that I talked about earlier, those rear shoulders. That helps strengthen us into this proud posture here. And I forget who said it before, but healthy body, I do think, equals a healthy mind, and will also give you more confidence while you're going about your day-to-day. Just not being self-conscious about what you feel like, what you look like. That space can be out of your head, and just putting in those 5 to 10 minutes periodically throughout the day, I think, can really help. Also, another great PostureBreak exercise that doesn't involve any cheap equipment like that tubing band there is all you need is a wall and 30 seconds. And I like doing what's called a neck plank. So right now I only have the base of my head up against the wall. And so what that's doing is it's stimulating these posterior muscles in the base of the neck that don't get used at all when we're working like this. And as soon as you do that, you'll automatically feel like you're just taller, you have better posture. So I think that's a great posture exercise. Might burn a couple calories. I'm not huge on the whole calorie situation because I think metabolism is something that everybody has a very different biological basis of. So I just like to think of movement as its own separate thing aside from weight loss. I also mentioned the standing desk. I think that is a huge, you can see how active I am here. And I just feel better about knowing that I'm not constrained to any chair, and it maybe helps me think a little bit better. You are actually burning a couple more calories, even though I said that doesn't really matter, but you are using your muscles in a more dynamic fashion. But then I don't want you to, or anybody, just be standing all day. Even our ancestor hunter-gatherers didn't stand all day. They were lying down, moving, building fire, whatever. They weren't in one static position. So if you do want to adopt a standing workstation, I would suggest alternating every 20 or so minutes between sitting and standing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing these. We have just a couple of minutes left. I don't see any questions just yet. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask any of our panelists, now would be a great time to send those in. While we're waiting, Zach, are there any other exercises you might want to take a minute or two to show us while we see if...
So glad that you asked. So I had that tubing band earlier. We're doing that band pull apart, but you can actually do the same thing just with your own hands. And so what you're still doing, you're going a little bit faster. I call this a pronated reverse fly, or palms down reverse fly. And not only are we strengthening the muscles in our upper back, we're also getting a nice stretch through the, yes, let's go, Maureen. I want to see James doing it now too.
I can do it.
And then we can even switch our grip. We can go palms up, and this will give us a slightly different feel. And look, you can't help but to smile and
I'm definitely smiling. Yeah.
and laugh at me while I'm doing this. And the nice thing about doing these types of movements in our own home is that you're not in a professional setting and looking like a freak doing some of these movements. I do recognize that in a professional setting, it is a little silly to be doing something like this, but what's more important, looking silly or actually treating your body properly.
Yeah.
I showed the neck plank earlier, and I'll just show one more, which I call the crown jewel of PostureBreak exercises because it is such a global movement, and it's called the split stance yoga plex. So you stand, you get into the split stance position, and you go through this big rainbow motion here, and you continuously move in this rainbow. And the benefits of this are vast. You're creating a nice stretch down to this hip flexor, which is the opposite position that we're in when we're seated. This is in a 90-degree position, and now that we're totally opened up, we're strengthening our hips, creating that stability. We're getting good mobility through our upper back, good rotation, and getting good extension through the shoulder blade muscles. So again, stimulating and activating some of those shoulder blade muscles. You do the same thing over on the left side, split stance, left foot back, left hand comes in front of the body. Once that left arm gets overhead, you turn your torso and just got a nice crack, and you complete that circle. You're also getting the added benefit of getting a little balance work in there too, which may help amp you up for whatever meeting it is that you may have to go to next.
Zach, do you have a rule of thumb? Do one little exercise every hour or something along those lines?
Definitely. I mean, I think everybody's going to be different, but I would give 3 options. Do one movement every 20 minutes, do one movement every 30 minutes, or at least every hour. I would say you cannot go an hour without moving. That is a big no-no.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been a great discussion and also a very great show and tell. I think I learned a lot. So, personally, just thank you. This is a great discussion for me. I hope it was for our audience as well. Thank you to all 3 of you for joining us. I haven't seen any questions come in, so I think we can wrap this one up. But if anybody does have any questions, homeofficehours@vistaprint.com is our email address, and you can send those along, and we'll take questions. We'll also take suggestions. We are running these every other Tuesday at this point, so if there are topics that anybody would like to hear, send them right on over. There's a survey too. If you're on Facebook, it's a pinned comment. If you're on Zoom, it will show up as a link on the screen afterwards and in the email you receive. Just fill out the survey. It's super quick. Let us know what you want to hear, and we'll try to cover it. So thank you again to all three of you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share all these words of wisdom and movements of wisdom with us as well.
Movements of wisdom. I couldn't have said any better myself.
We also have a practice of shout outs and recognition on our team. So shout out to Corey for pulling us all together in this great content. Appreciate all this work you've been doing.
Yes, thank you, Corey.
Time to jump on. All right, well, this has been Home Office Hours Live. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk with everyone soon. Bye.
Bye.